Welcome to the Healthier Tech Podcast, the show about building a healthier relationship with modern technology. Now here are your hosts, R. Blank and Stephanie Warner.
Loren Cellentani is a holistic health coach and host of the top-rated podcast, Witchy Wellness Radio. Loren spent a good portion of her life feeling like her body and emotions were sabotaging any chance at a happy and successful life. From crippling anxiety, chronic digestive distress, and migraines, it was during the middle of a divorce she knew something had to change. She has been able to crack the code to turn energy-draining anxiety and stress into focused, confident action that helped her find peace of mind in the present moment. And she now shares this knowledge with her online course, Anxious to Aligned, and her VIP coaching. Loren is now on a mission to help women harness the power of their emotions and bodies to achieve their dreams. Welcome, Loren, to the Healthier Tech Podcast.
Oh my gosh, thank you, R, for having me on. I'm so excited to join you today.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. For those listeners who don't know, I was on Witchy Wellness last year. I appreciate you having me on. But now the tables are turned, so I get to put you in the hot seat.
Yes, it's nice to finally meet you too. We're happy to have you on. Thanks for joining us today.
Of course, thank you guys.
So I'm gonna start by asking you something that last time I asked you outside of the recording, but I think when someone hears your podcast name, they might reasonably have this question. So are you a witch?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, hello. I think I have to be if that's my podcast. And a witch to me is, yes, I do love crystals. I love essential oils and all the woo-woo stuff, but it's a woman who's in her power, who understands, like the tagline of my podcast is, your emotions and your body are not in the way. They are leading the way. And you probably can tell my voice, I'm getting a little bit of an upgrade. I'm a little under the weather, but everything, including a cold, is in the way. It's guiding me to where I need to be, which is more of who I am. So that to me is what a witch is, and 100% card-carrying member witch club here.
Who's the issuing authority on that one?
Well, yeah, I guess it's me, myself, and I is the issue.
So I'm really glad to have the chance to talk to you today, in particular, because anxiety is such a prevalent issue. And in fact, I didn't plan this, but just this weekend, the weekend before we're recording, I watched that new documentary on Netflix that's all about Xanax, and some of the stats in there. I mean, I know just from casual reading that anxiety is becoming a tremendous issue. I also know through a lot of the work that I do at Shield Your Body that EMF is a contributing factor to that, but it's certainly not the only cause of it. But it's, I mean, I should have written this down, but it was some staggering percentage of Americans suffer from anxiety or will suffer from anxiety, and apparently the rates are significantly higher for women than for men, which I was also surprised to find out. So anyway, now I find myself rambling. I shouldn't be doing that, but that's why I'm so happy to have you on. So getting right into the actual question, so you had your first, what you described as a panic attack at your college graduation. What was that like? What did you realize that it was a panic attack, or what did it feel like?
Yeah, a loss of complete control is what it was, really. And I kind of knew what was happening. I just felt really nervous at first, and then it just kept growing and growing and growing. And thankfully, my best friend was sitting next to me, and she had these like mints in her purse, and she kept giving me mints to kind of calm me down. But it was later on, not at the time, because hindsight is always 20/20. I realized that, of course, I think a lot of women have more anxiety because I'm a millennial. My mother's generation worked so hard in terms of feminism to have equal rights. For her in high school, there were no women's sports teams. She had to fight and fight and fight. And so I think as a millennial woman, we feel like we have to do it all everything, have the career, the family, do it, everything, put it all on our backs, and not really ask ourselves, what do we want? What do we want? And from the time I was a small child, I grew up in a very loving and privileged household, but it was, what do you want to do sports-wise, extracurricular-wise, in order to get into a good college so you can get a good job and, set yourself up for success. But sometimes we don't realize we lose ourselves in that whole process, and we forget how to tune in to that feminine side, the intuition side, and we're just pushing, pushing, pushing. So I got to this point in my life that I had been preparing for since, 5 years old, and it's here, and it's like, and now what? Is this it? So my body and its wisdom, even though I didn't feel like it at the time, took over and complete sheer panic. And so for me, it took, the next few years, decade of, okay, why did this come up? And there's got to be more to life than this. When you start asking these questions about yourself, that's when you are ready to really take a deep dive and change. And things like diet, looking at, like you said, the EMF waves and technology, there are things in a 3D way we can do to help support our bodies for success, because we don't want to create a stressful environment for ourselves, especially when we're healing and we're changing. But for me, it really took taking a look inward, and it's not a one and done. Like, I'm going through the ringer now physically, and that had brought up a lot of emotions and fear for me that I'm like, didn't I deal with all this panic stuff already? Could we just be done? But it's not like that, because there's always another layer. There's always another layer. And anxiety for me was such a kind of a catch-all thing, because it's not the anxiety. It's always something deeper. There's always something. There's an underlying cause from the anxiety or the physical sensations you might feel in your body are just the messengers for you to take a look inward to see really what's going on. And for me, that's completely changed my life, and even in the past year, I've dug deeper, like I said, into this, and I moved across country. I was still in the same city I grew up with, and now I'm in sunny Florida. And just finding more and more things that I didn't realize that I wanted in my life. But when I started to take a deeper look of like, wow, am I choosing and creating a life that I want, or choosing creating a life that everybody else thinks I should have?
Right, right.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And I just kind of want to kind of pull back a little bit to that time you had your first panic attack. Like, what led so I know that that was a trigger to lead you into doing kind of that deeper work and asking these questions, but what was that projection between, or that journey between, I had an anxiety attack, I realized that's what it is, and I need to now do some deeper looking? What was in between there, and how did you get to this place where you're like, okay, I think I understand what happened and the things I need to do? How did you get there from anxiety to, working on healing the anxiety?
Yeah, I think it's easy to gloss over that, right? Like, that journey was not easy. And for time purposes, I normally don't dive in. But yeah, for me, I mean, I was so anxious from that point on. I couldn't even go to a yoga class because I was like, what if I don't know the next pose they teach me? And, having chronic multiple panic attacks a day, I tried to take medication, but I love my body, and it is a canary in a coal mine. If there is a side effect, I will have it in any type of medication, which I think is a blessing, but it just didn't work for me. Which was great, because I was forced to really deal with it. And I grew up in a household that wasn't into therapy or anything like that. That just wasn't the norm. So I went more, the self-help spiritual route. I did, start going to therapy, but for me, it was starting to slowly get into eating healthier, taking a look at what I was putting into my body, because that was kind of, it's the fuel that drives us. So I really got into the health and wellness at first, and I became a health coach, and I loved it. And just as time progressed, I started to get into meditation and the power of your mind and your subconscious mind, and how, over 90% of our mind is subconscious. And so we're running on this autopilot. We don't even know that's there. So how can we take a look and peel back those layers to see, okay, what are the beliefs and the thoughts that I have that are running the show that I don't even know? And 9 times out of 10, they are created from childhood. So you have this inner child running your show, and, which not everything is bad. I love my inner child. She's playful, she's fun, she's creative, she doesn't care what anybody thinks. She's got an awesome fashion style. I will say. I used to rock 2 different colored socks with like cowboy tassel boots. Just, it was awesome. But it really, my body, like I said before, it's always leading the way, forced me to keep continually looking inward and inward. And things in life, like going through a divorce, it's like, okay, when you go through a bad breakup, you just really want to point the finger at the other person sometimes and say, it's your fault. This is why. But I was like, listen, I'm an adult here. I can't control anybody else other than me. So what in me created this situation for me to get here in my life? And what do I want? What do I want to create? How do I want to feel? So at that turning point, I really, really, really started to do the inner work, and things like meditation, yoga helps a lot, breath work, things that allow us to relax our nervous system, become present, become calm, and we're able to really look inside. But we can also rewire our hard drives as well, so that you don't automatically, we're like a supercomputer. When something happens and triggers you, you have a choice to act differently, but it's about building that muscle. And the easiest thing you can do is you don't have to meditate for 3 hours to start doing this. For me, it's like you go around the block the same way to take your dog for a walk every single day, probably. We're creatures of habit. It's autopilot. So today, why don't go the opposite way around the block? Just literally things like that throughout the day. If you can just change it up, nothing like you don't have to add a 5-hour morning routine. Just start to change things up so that you have to be present. You're just not running on this autopilot all of the time, because that is what's running the show and creating things that we may not want in our life, but that's what we've practiced and conditioned ourselves to do over time. So that's just automatically going to pop up.
So this sounds like it's part of your Manifesting Me program, and I want to get into that. And our listeners should know on your website, which is lorencellentani.com, which we'll link to in the show notes, you have an anxious personality type quiz. And I know it's for women, but I broke the rules and I took it anyway.
I saw that. I was like, yes, first got to take it.
So I see that I am, and this is probably the first and only time in my life where I have been called a fawn. Yeah. So I'm wondering, what does that tell you about me, that I am a fawn?
Yeah, so what I did was the anxious personality type quiz, is I went through the 4 trauma responses, which is fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, which people have heard of, fight or flight response. We have all of them in our day-to-day life, but I created this quiz that will give you a little bit of an insight to like kind of your major response, like if your gut response to when you get triggered or something or trauma happens in your life. So each of those responses allows you to look at okay, what are maybe some physical things that might pop up when I feel this way? What are some emotions that I might feel in this response? What are some questions that I can start to ask myself to work through this? Like, why am I creating this in my life? And how can I use this emotion or this anxiety to manifest what I do want? How can I harness this energy and use it for good, right? To start to snowball in a direction where I want to go with my life. But the fawn response is one of the 2 that are kind of underactive. So we have fawn and freeze. So those are the kind that I suggest to kind of calm up your energy. So get the energy moving, shake it around. And when you're fighting or fleeing, that's when I say calm down, because you can tell in the energy of those 2 groups that like when you're really feisty or flighty, like you have a lot of energy, you have a lot of what we would normally call anxiety, you need to take a chill pill. we need to take a deep breath and calm down and become more centered to see what's going on underneath. And with fawn and with freeze, freeze itself, you're frozen. So we need to learn how to work with that energy to cultivate it, to really tap into it and awaken it. And with fawn specifically, it's, really looking outside of yourself for that approval, or, fawning over someone or something versus what do I really, really want? What's true for me? And freeze is, the names are kind of self-explanatory, but when you get triggered, you want to shut down and kind of hibernate. Maybe you're scrolling on your phone a lot. You start noticing you're stuck on Netflix for hours and hours. Flighty energy is, you can't sit still in an uncomfortable conversation. You might like to travel a lot. You can't stay in one space. You have to keep moving, or you'll start to actually feel your feelings. That fighty energy, that fight, when you get triggered, you're not going to run away. You're going to push in. You're going to lean forward, and you're going to probably say things that you might not think you would want to say. But these are just automatic responses that our body has learned that, okay, when I get triggered or put in these situations, I'm just going to run this program. There's nothing wrong with them. But for me, realizing, okay, how can we kind of create a system so it's easy for when you are feeling triggered or feeling anxiousness? It's not this catch-all thing. You can say, oh, look, I took this quiz, which after you take the quiz, you can read about all the other types, because we all have the other types as well.
Right.
And so you can ask yourself and start to build that awareness, like I said. So when something pops up again, you might actually catch yourself, maybe before or during it, going, look at me running this fight program.
You're like, I am a fawn. Look at
that. I am. Okay, well, maybe I'm just going to feel it for a little bit longer, because that feels really good. But maybe next time I'm going to catch it, and I'm just going to take a break and go take a walk, or I'm going to whatever. I'm going to break the pattern. And once you start realizing and you start to implement these things in your life, you'll actually start to hear the thought or feel the emotion and start to become that observer, like the scientist of your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It sounds like, and I found this true for my own life, just building the awareness is obviously step one of breaking a pattern. But if you're aware of it, then you can do that important next step of, changing the behavior, or being more intentful with whatever the response is, or just how I'm feeling. And that kind of brings me to I'd love to ask a little bit more about your Manifesting Me program. Can you tell us what that is, and give our listeners some information about what that program is all about?
I would love to. This is my baby. So I really shifted my business from, I still work with women with anxiety, but let's look at what we really want. We want to manifest our dream lives. And so, like I said before, myself included, as a millennial woman, I'm very ambitious. But sometimes that comes with a lot of anxiousness, and we feel like we're on this like self-sabotaging loop. And I know I'm an entrepreneur, and so many of my friends are. And when you start to find something, or you heal a part of your life, you want to give back. You want to help other people. And then you start to get into this world, whether you have your passion or not, and you realize, oh my God, there's a whole nother self-help journey that is involved in all of this. So Manifesting Me is really about help solving the three things that help, keep ambitious women from living their dream life. So we first look at the emotions. We take a deep dive. What are the root causes? Like, what are you feeling on a day-to-day life? Because our emotions are what creates our reality. We don't really want the car. We don't really want the dream partner. We don't really want that business. We want to feel how we think we're going to feel when those things are in our reality. So if you are living your current reality, literally addicted to the emotions that have created where you are right now, we need to start to observe, like we just talked about, what's really underneath that subconscious mind of yours, so that we can start to observe, we can start to choose differently. But that first 1/3 of the course is just all about emotions. And the first thing that I do is have you write down your emotions for a week. And if you could do it for longer, that's great. For a whole month. Every night, at the end of the day, it's not about he said this, she did this. It's just go through your day. Takes 5 minutes. You could do this right now. How did I feel? What are the emotions that came up today? And if you can do that for at least a week, at the end of that week, you're going to look through your little journaling and you are going to start to see patterns. You might feel frustrated a lot of the time. And you didn't realize, oh my God, I'm going through the day just looking for things to confirm my hit of frustration. And we don't realize it. Like, we are literally addicted to these emotions and we want to create this reality. Law of attraction, you can't change. Law of attraction is always happening. So what we can do is we can change what we want to focus on. And when we can become
Right.
aware of like, oh my God, I'm really trying to get this hit of frustration, you can almost become a little humorous with yourself and say, okay, well, what do I want to feel instead? Satisfied, happy, free? How can I start looking for those things in my life as well?
Would step one, well, I don't want to reduce it to
Yeah.
steps, but with the first part, it sounds like it's you're kind of being more aware of
Yeah.
what your patterns are,
Yeah.
what you're kind of addicted to as
Mhm.
far as, whatever emotions. And then the next part is what would the next part look like for
Yeah.
you in the program?
Yeah.
And I also have one follow, sorry.
Yeah.
Is the program online? Is this a one-on-one? Like, how do you work with people through this program?
Yeah, so it is an online course, but it's a group coaching program.
Oh, great.
So there is an online course section with videos and your own login and all that kind of stuff. And then there's a Facebook group with the members and then weekly group coaching calls. Because I have found that when you go through something with like-minded people, you're not only going to learn from your own experience, but you're going to learn from everybody else's. And to have a community
Yeah.
that's going through the same thing together, who has the same mission, there is a power and a magic that's unexplainable in all of that. So that's kind of the format of how it's delivered. And then the second part is we start to really take a look at those emotions and those beliefs, and we get to start to discern, is this something I need to dive deep into? Do I need to feel this and really process this? Or is this something that I just need to do something differently and, kind of shift my energy? And I like to call that divine discipline. So we really start to build this divine discipline muscle and we start to understand, is this just something that I need to get a hit of, quote unquote? And I already know where this comes from. I work through this. I just need to shift my energy, or is this something I need to really process and feel and allow to kind of work through my body in order for me to really gain that wisdom underneath? So the second part is just like we identified the first part. Second part is we start to build this divine discipline muscle of discernment, really. And when we can do that, we start to build this trust in ourselves. And the third part is like the problem I help solve is we don't trust ourselves or our intuition or the universe or source, whatever you want to call it. So when we can start to take a look and say, oh my God, look at all this proof that I've changed already just by observing my thoughts and my emotions, you can really start to trust yourself and learn how to surrender. And the third part is when we really dive into the kind of mechanics of creating what life do I want to live? What do I want to create? And kind of dive into the woo side of it, versus the first 2/3 are really taking a look underneath that subconscious hood, what's going on, and just reprogram. It takes a lot of discipline, but you don't have to spend 3 hours every day meditating to do this. That would be great if you want to do that, if that feels like something that's fun for you.
If you have 3 hours
If you
to
have
do
3
that.
hours, go right ahead. I definitely don't. And that's why I really wanted to create this program, because just becoming the observer of your life and your thoughts and your emotions allows you to change so much of your life. And not only that, really create your life, because it's not about the car or the partner, whatever you want to manifest in your life. It's really about the person that you become along the way. And that's what this is going to teach you. The course is literally called Manifesting Me. because you're manifesting more of yourself. And it's just such an honor because I go through it too. It's like, I have to walk the walk and talk the talk. For me, it's like, wow, this is never ending. And when you can start to understand these principles, you can continually apply them for the rest of your life with any change or thing that you want to manifest.
Yeah, that third part you said, oh, the third part sounds woo, but it didn't sound woo to me. I mean, actually thinking about, I mean, and Stephanie, I think, said this earlier, which is it's about intent. And so, actually putting some intent behind, oh, what is the person that I want to be? What is the life that I want to? That doesn't sound. I mean, maybe I'm off base on this. Maybe I'm woo, but that didn't sound woo to me. So there's a question that I like to ask the guests who come on this show, which is the role, because technology is, I mean, it's everywhere now. It's part of almost every experience, and when it comes to the types of challenges you are helping your clients overcome, what is the role that you are seeing technology play? And the answer, obviously, positive and or negative. Like I mean, obviously you're delivering your program through a digital interface, so you wouldn't be able to do that without technology. But what are some of the ways in which you're seeing technology impact your clientele?
Well, I would say first and foremost, it's accessible to practice these tools like meditation. I don't know if anybody here has been on Insight Timer, completely free app. It's awesome. You can find any type of meditation. There's courses on there. The accessibility for growth and change now, because of technology, there's no excuse other than yourself, right? Like you can access information, but at the same time, like I talked about with the freeze response earlier, we can get sucked down into the rabbit hole because we're searching for that next hit of dopamine. Like we'll keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and that can become very addictive too. So I think for me, you have to be very conscious of what is the intent? What is the intention behind me picking up this device? It's what do I want to get out of it? Do you find yourself focusing on that a lot, like for yourself, separate from your clients? Yeah, because I have to put timer limits on my phone for especially social media, because it kind of sucks down the rabbit hole. And I'm like, I know myself, and I'll go on there. I'm like, I'll do research for me, quote unquote. I'm gonna research the new trends, and no, I'm just sucked down the mean rabbit hole, And for you, is that just a matter of managing your time and productivity, or is it also about your emotional state? And both. It's both. I think it's both. And for me, I notice myself wanting to do that. I'm like, oh, okay, you can do this for 5 minutes. We're going to give you a limit, and then we're going to do something else. Like, even just going on YouTube, which is technology for me, and I love listening to Abraham Hicks. They talk all about law of attraction, just searching the next video, whatever the algorithm puts on there for me, put it on, put my phone across the room, and just sit there and listen. Because sometimes when you're in it, like, you don't want to go meditate, you don't want to go, do all the things you should be doing. But if you can just get yourself to just sit down and be present, and technology can help you with that. And I have all these meditation tech tools that I have that are like, a pulse oximeter for measuring my blood oxygen level. So when I am doing breath work, I can actually get this biofeedback in real time to see, am I actually physically changing? Great. I've got a heart rate variability monitor that allows me to see, okay, with my breath work, with meditation, am I really calming down? There's this biofeedback thing in the transformation world or meditation world, which is really cool with technology. I don't use them all the time. I maybe use them at this point, if I'm being honest, maybe not even once a month anymore. But when I first got these tools, it was really cool when I'm learning, okay, this is what it feels like to be really present. This is what it feels like when I open my focus and I get into a different brainwave state. This is what it feels like. So sounds like you have a lot of discipline. I mean, and obviously,
there's a lot more to life than just how much you spent on YouTube
Yeah.
or scroll. But it sounds like you have this ability to say, no, this is how much I should be doing, and I'm not going to be doing anymore. Do you?
Sometimes, yes. I'll be honest. Sometimes I'll get the reminder on my phone. You've reached your app limit today.
And you're like, snooze for 5
F you.
minutes.
I haven't. So yeah, there's a balance with everything, but it's also setting yourself up for success and being really present and knowing yourself and saying, okay, I know I have this tendency. No judgment, but how can I set myself up for success so that it's easier for me to make a choice that's better for me. So I'm not always
Right.
glued to my phone. Because I remember the biggest thing you said on my podcast, which I was like, oh, it makes so much sense, is just limit the distance between you and the technology is going to really help you. So for me, like if I am not consciously on my phone, I will put it across the room. I will put it in the other room, especially if I'm trying to work, because it's so easy just to pick that up like a habit.
Made a difference.
And you made a difference. And I remember you saying this. And I was like, oh, that's so easy and so accessible. Just put it on the other side of the room,
Yeah. So you've been talking a lot about building intuition and self-trust, and we were just talking about it. And it's a key part of your approach to the work that you do. In terms of an action item that we might be able to leave our listeners with, right now to help them start on that journey of building intuition and self-trust, what would be, like one or maybe two things that you could tell people what they to start on this journey?
Yeah, and we already said it, but I'm going to preach it the rest of my days here. Take a week, write down those emotions every night. And even if you can do it for a few weeks, because you're going to start to see these trends. And as a woman, especially right before your menstrual cycle starts or during your menstrual cycle, everybody's heard about PMS and the emotions that we have, but those have been there all month long. But our bodies have zero filter and give 0 Fs during this time, which is a great thing because we can do this deep dive and say, oh my God, that anger was there all month. Like, what is my body trying to tell me? So if you can do it, right before, during your period or for a whole month, right? Just write down your emotions every day and just build that awareness and start to see these themes and say, wow, I'm really addicted to this anger, this frustration, or maybe I am really happy all the time and I just don't realize it. How can I be more present in my day-to-day life? So as simple as that sounds, it's very impactful.
No, go on. Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, and put your phone on the other side of the room is what I'm going to say.
Yeah. No, it's funny. There's a management guru named Peter Drucker, a little bit old school. But one of his famous lines that you just reminded me of is, what gets measured gets managed. And if you're not measuring something, it's not going to get managed. And what you just outlined sounded to me like, well, I mean, because measuring emotion is not emotion is not one of those things that intuitively you think, oh, I can measure my emotion. But you're right. If you could just start writing it down on a regular basis and tracking it, then you can start having the set of information that would allow you to move forward with the intent that we've been talking about. I really like that tip.
That was a really male summary, and I loved it. I loved it.
I am who I am.
We covered all listeners. We got the witchy wellness over here. Yeah. We got the very straightforward male, so anybody listening, you will understand.
Hey, that's a great,
no,
what gets measured,
that was great,
what gets measured gets managed. It's a fantastic. I'm not going to be defensive over that.
Oh no, you should. You shouldn't be defensive at all. I think that some people, and it doesn't matter what your gender is, some people, the measuring is the thing that makes it real. Like that ability to see the pattern makes it a little bit more real and a little bit more manageable.
Yeah.
Not just because you have the data, but just like, okay, this is actually a thing. This is now taken out of emotion and is brought into kind of the real world. It becomes tangible, even though it's not tangible.
Yeah.
Loren, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I have to confess, just listening to your voice, there's something about your voice. It just I find it really uplifts my mood. So I'm really happy to have the chance to talk to you.
Even under with the sniffles, I'm glad that you still think that.
Yeah. So we mentioned LorenCellentani.com.
Yep.
The Manifesting Me program, the Anxious Personality Type quiz, and all of these will be linked in the show notes. Are there other ways in which you would like our listeners to connect with you or get in touch with you?
Yeah. So obviously, Witchy Wellness Radio is on all platforms. We can even send over the link for ours episode. But yay! But I'm also on Instagram at Loren Cellentani, and I'm starting my own YouTube channel. I've been wanting to do this for like a year, and I'm starting. We're recording this in December, so the end of December is when I'm going to relaunch it. And my podcast will be also on YouTube. It was at one point, and now I'm bringing the video back.
Yeah.
So
Excellent.
it'll be an awesome weekly video with just me, normal kind of YouTube content, and then the weekly Witchy Wellness Radio interviews as well. So I'm very excited about that. And yeah, I hope to see you guys over there because I love YouTube. I love the inspiration. I love how it's this like the technology, right, of this search engine where you can learn anything, you can meditate, you can listen to anything. It's right there in your fingertips. So as long as we have the intention, it's there.
Yeah, no, totally. And we'll link to everything that you just mentioned in the show notes and on the Healthier Tech website. And Loren, this has been such a great pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I can't wait for our listeners to hear this and to look into the work that you're doing.
And for braving through the frog in your throat just to make this happen.
Thank you.
It's fine. I'm totally here for it. I'm very honored. Thank you guys so much for having me on. I love talking about this stuff because it's if you want to change the world, you got to take a look inside. You got to change yourself first. And this is the stuff that's helped me, and it just inspires me to want to help other people as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Healthier Tech Podcast. Remember to check the show notes for all the links and resources mentioned in the show. Please like and subscribe to the Healthier Tech Podcast on Apple, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice. Get your free quick start guide to building a healthier relationship with technology and our latest information at healthiertech.co.